Exodus opens as the story shifts from focusing on Jacob's family in Genesis to the larger nation of Israel. Joseph and his brothers have died, and there's a new Pharaoh, one who didn't know Joseph, and he comes into power in Egypt. I'm calling this, and what's the deal with Pharaoh's overwhelming violence and evil towards the Israelites? Now here in Genesis 1, 8 through 10, then a new king, to whom Joseph meant nothing, came into power in Egypt. Look, he said to the people, the Israelites have become far too numerous for us. Come, we must deal with them shrewdly, or they will become even more numerous, and if war breaks out, hey, they'll join our enemies, fight against us, and leave our country. The new king, who did not know Joseph, likely refers to a dynastic change. Many scholars suggest that the transition from the Hyksos rulers that were foreigners and sympathetic towards Semitic people, like the Hebrews, are now to the native Egyptian rulers who sought to reassert their power. But the Israelites, who began as a small family of 70 people, in Genesis 48:27, have become a large ethnic community that's perceived as a threat to Egypt's stability. To control them, Pharaoh forces the Israelites into harsh labor, forcing them into back-breaking labor building store cities like Pithom and Ramses. In Exodus 1:12 through 14, but the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and spread. So the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites and worked them ruthlessly. They made their lives bitter and harsh, laboring in brick and mortar and with all kinds of work in the fields. In all their harsh labor, the Egyptians worked them ruthlessly. But not just the Jews. Recall in Genesis, the Egyptian people volunteered to place themselves into Pharaoh's bondage. Pithom and Ramses were like strategic supply cities for military and trade purposes. Forced labor on such projects was common for subjugated people in Egypt. The Israelites worked as part of a broader Egyptian pattern of using congregated and marginalized groups for state construction. Pharaoh's plan mirrors known ancient Near Eastern strategies, using forced labor to weaken a group and targeted infanticide to curb future military strength. Boys were singled out because they would grow into potential warriors. Girls could be assimilated into the Egyptian household. Frustrated by the Jewish resilience, Pharaoh escalates his oppression. He orders Hebrew midwives, Shiphrah and Puah, to kill all newborn Hebrew boys. However, they feared God and they refused. I'm reading now from Exodus 1:17 through 21. The midwives, however, feared God and did not do what the king of Egypt had told them to do. They let the boys live. And then the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and asked them, why have you done this? Why have you let the boys live? The midwives answered Pharaoh, hey, Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They're more vigorous, and they give birth before the midwives arrive. So God was kind to the midwives, and the Hebrew population increased and became even more numerous. And because the midwives feared God, he gave them the families of their own. Now, midwives were a vital figure in childbirth and in community life, often deeply respected, and their bravery represents not just personal courage, but a counterculture of defiance of imperial authority, a rare recorded instance of women shaping the fate of an entire people. The midwife's defiance also highlights the theme of God honoring those who choose righteousness over fear of rulers. Now, the chapter ends on this horrific note. Exodus 1:22. Then Pharaoh gave this order to all his people. Every Hebrew boy born you must throw into the Nile, but let every girl live. Now the Nile was sacred and life-giving. It was a symbol of fertility, but throwing babies into it turned it into a tool of death. A grim reversal that would later be poetically reversed when God used the Nile in the plagues against Egypt. So that wraps up chapter 1 of Exodus. Now things start heating up with Moses next week.